Here's Brandon, dude. Dark Brandon is back, baby.
Looks like groceries and gasoline have gotten at least a little bit cheaper lately. It's true, they have. Inflation was lower in May. It's the 11th straight month that prices are down, and that could mean that no more interest rate hikes, at least from now, from the Federal Reserve. Nancy Cordes is at the White House for us covering all this. Nancy, good morning.
Good morning, Tony. Yes, that's what we're going to be watching today. The Federal Reserve is meeting again today to decide whether to raise interest rates again. But most analysts now believe that they're going to hit the pause button, thanks in part to those latest inflation numbers from May, which show that prices are up just 4% from a year ago. And I say just because inflation has now been cut by more than half since the peak of 9.1% last June as we were coming out of the pandemic. Now, 4% means that the prices for most things are still going up, just not as quickly, and the cost of some key items is actually coming down. Gasoline, for instance, is now about $1.40 less per gallon than it was at the peak, and the price of eggs dropped nearly 14% from April to May. You may have noticed that in the grocery store. That's a signal.
I wonder why that happened. Did something dramatically shift in the production of eggs? Was there an avian flu that actually impacted the egg production, and then all of a sudden it no longer impacted them? Oh no, none of that happened. People caught wind of what the fucking California egg producer, which is like basically a monopoly. No, literally, the only reason why it fucking went down is because people started criticizing the single largest fucking egg producer in the nation, which is in California. So that backlash caused them to basically lower the prices, which, by the way, they didn't have to even increase the prices to begin with. It was all a lie. Now, here's the thing. When you find that out, if you're Joe Brandon, do you think Joe Brandon doesn't know? I mean, obviously, Hasan, there was an avian flu. They did the profiting on top of it, though. No, the avian flu was literally bullshit. California wasn't impacted by the avian flu. They lied and claimed that it was the fucking avian flu that actually was the reason why they raised their egg prices. They lied about it, for the record. The national market was impacted by it. Oh my God, dude. It doesn't matter if the national market is impacted by it. You have to remember, once again, that every single instance of inflation is usually due to corporate greed, okay? That's it.
Eggs, a typically unremarkable grocery-less staple for most Americans, became a point of financial stress and confusion over the course of a single year.
Rewatch this so that chat is refreshed.
Between January 2022 and January 2023, the average price consumers were paying for a carton of eggs shot up by 150%, hitting an all-time high of $4.82 a dozen.
Have another egg.
No.
Egg companies sold their eggs to grocery stores at unparalleled prices, peaking from about $1.20 a dozen to $5.20 a dozen within 12 months. As a result, grocery stores were forced to hike up their egg prices to turn a profit. To make matters even more confusing, egg prices for retailers started to plummet at the start of 2023, dropping by at least $2.90 a dozen out of nowhere. To explain the dramatic swing in wholesale prices, big egg companies like Cal-Maine Foods pointed their fingers at two factors: a rampant flu that plagued their chickens, and, you guessed it, inflation.
Like, inflation is like a separate entity. I love when companies go, oh, dude, inflation. Like, it's totally outside of our control. It's like, no, your reaction to other aspects of your commodity production going up is contributing to inflation. You're making it seem as though you have no other fucking... Like, inflation is not happening individually. Inflation does not happen on its own. Inflation happens when these companies, especially one like Cal-Maine, which owns like a monopoly share of the fucking egg market, decides to up their prices.
These companies want consumers to believe that the ridiculous sticker prices we saw in 2022 and early 2023 were necessary to make up for sick hens and rising feed costs. But here's where the numbers don't add up. Dominant egg producers not only made up for lower supply and increased costs, they profited off them big time. Just look at Cal-Maine Foods' gross profit margin. Gross profit margin measures how much money a company earned after accounting for production costs. Cal-Maine Foods more than quadrupled its gross profit margin after raising the price of its eggs. If Cal-Maine fairly raised prices...
Wait a minute, what? Guys, what? Wait, how did they make so much money? Wait a minute, dude. Egg producers accused of price gouging after 718% profit has been revealed. Cal-Maine Foods has been accused of price gouging on social media. It was revealed that the company doubled its revenues and grew its profit by 700% in the last quarter. They openly fucking said not a single one of their egg-laying chickens got the avian flu. Remember, this morning you were talking about the NPR analysis, right? Remember what kind of fucking information you're getting, even if it's NPR, okay? Even if it's NPR.
To offset inflation and the avian flu, its gross profit margin would stay about the same. So, to figure out what's really going on with egg prices, we talked to one of the leading experts on food monopolies.
I'm Angela Huffman. I'm the vice president and co-founder of Farm Action. Farm Action is a farmer-led nonprofit taking on corporate consolidation in the food system. Contrary to the narrative of these industry leaders, these price increases are not due to an act of God. It's just plain profiteering.
So what's the true story behind those sky-high egg prices? And who's to blame? And what can we do to make sure this never happens again? I'm June, and this is More Perfect Union. Now let's get cracking.
You know what? Maybe I will have some eggs. Toast?
Since Cal-Maine Foods is the largest egg producer and distributor in the U.S., we're going to keep our focus there. Cal-Maine's CEO, Sherman Miller, recently celebrated his company's record sales and net income for the second quarter of fiscal 2023. The company made over $300 million in the second half of 2022, while the price of eggs was skyrocketing. Millions of Americans were paying record prices for eggs, while Cal-Maine got rich. So of course they needed a defense for raising prices. And this brings us to our first claim, the bird flu. In the company's December earnings report, Cal-Maine's CEO attributed the company's record average selling prices for conventional eggs to a reduced supply related to the outbreak in the U.S. of highly pathogenic avian influenza. It's true that last year, avian flu outbreaks resulted in the loss of 43 million egg-laying hens. But here's the catch. In the same breath, CEO Sherman Miller says there have been no positive tests for this bird flu at any of Cal-Maine Foods' owned or contracted.
That's crazy, dog. No way. No way. So one of the largest fucking chicken providers in the one of the largest egg providers in the nation had zero bird flu in their facilities? Wait a minute, dude. What? And then they had 700% increase in profits? What?
Production facilities as of December 28, 2022. Not a single Cal-Maine hen died from bird flu. Zero. Now, obviously, other egg producers were impacted by the bird flu. So one might reason that with supply down nationwide, grocery chains would understandably run to Cal-Maine to secure their egg stock for upcoming months and would be willing to pay a pretty penny to do so. And Cal-Maine Foods, being the massive corporation that it is, one that controls 20% of the egg market, would of course welcome and encourage all of those pretty pennies happily. Now, that would all make sense if the highly pathogenic avian influenza did in fact reduce supply in the way CEOs like Sherman Miller described. But once we looked into it, we realized that the numbers aren't as black and white as they appear.
The egg industry experienced no substantial decline in egg production in the last quarter of 2022 compared to 2021.
The number of egg-laying flocks, on average, only dropped 6 to 8% from the year prior, according to the USDA.
In addition to that, that number was even further blunted by record high lay rates, meaning the existing egg-laying hens laid even more eggs than the year before.
As it turns out, the hit to egg supply wasn't as dramatic as companies like Cal-Maine want you to believe. The bird flu outbreak for sure doesn't account for the 150.5% increase in the net average price for a dozen of Cal-Maine's conventional.
Wait a minute. Are you telling me that these guys just raised prices because everything else was getting more expensive so they could get away with raising prices on this aspect as well? And then point the finger of blame at this random thing called inflation as though it's completely outside of their control while directly contributing to said inflation? No, stop. That's crazy. I'm sure NPR probably factored this into their analysis. After all, they wouldn't be the corporate fucking stooges that are there not to actually inform you on what happens, but instead on, maintaining the fucking public order.
Eggs from 1 year to the next. Now, back to that other excuse corporations love to deploy when justifying price hikes: inflation. Although we might disagree on the factors causing inflation, we can all agree that it's happening. Costs are up across the board, and the egg industry is not exempt. However, according to its own presentation to investors, Cal-Maine's total farm production and feed costs in 2022 were just 22% higher than they were in 2021. Remember, the price you paid for eggs went up 150% in this time, and Cal-Maine's profit margins quadrupled. So while a price increase is expected to keep up with rising production costs, no narrative that the egg industry pushed seems to explain why dominant egg producers more than quadrupled their wholesale prices.
There's just no other supply chain excuse that would justify these increase in egg prices. The fact that Cal-Maine is both raising its prices and grossly increasing its profit margins at the same time without any reasonable business justification for that suggests that it's foul play.
If a bird flu epidemic and inflation can't fully explain why egg prices soared over the last year, then what can? One clue is in the suspicious lack of price competition within the egg industry at large. Back in August, the USDA expected companies to start purchasing more chicks and increasing production while feed costs were moderating and egg prices were soaring.
So in a competitive and normally functioning market, we would expect that one of these companies would lower their prices so that they could swoop in and take that market share.
You'd expect competition to start driving prices down, but for some strange reason, production didn't increase. Prices kept rising.
There seems to be a collusive scheme among these industry leaders to turn inflationary conditions and an avian flu into an excuse to gouge consumers and raise prices. Why produce more if you can make more money producing less?
You might be thinking, didn't you say that these big egg companies recently dropped their wholesale prices pretty significantly after all? So maybe there really was something exceptional going on behind the scenes that required some once-in-a-lifetime price increases? To be completely honest, we're also confused by the latest numbers. Angela, have you seen the drop in wholesale egg prices?
Yeah, it's pretty crazy, right? Although prices are still a lot higher than they were last year.
But where did that drop come from and why now?
Well, we're not seeing any major changes in the market that would explain these lower prices, just like there wasn't a substantial change to justify the massive price increases that we talked about before. There isn't a sudden increase in egg supply to bring down the prices or anything like that to easily explain this.
So these companies dropped their wholesale prices randomly?
Well, the USDA says that consumer demand for eggs is down a little bit due to resistance to the record high prices in grocery stores. In a recent report, the USDA actually pointed to the negative media attention on the issue of egg prices as a factor for why consumers are holding back. It wouldn't be the first time that a corporation quickly lowered its prices after being called out for price gouging in the news. Anything to
So literally everything I said happened. So, got it.
divert attention elsewhere, especially with Easter coming up.
Yeah, I forgot about Easter.
Well, the egg companies haven't. They're desperate to win back consumers in time for the holiday.
Just so they can increase prices again?
Well, an increase in prices.
What's even more wild is this industry is super cheap to get into. Realistically, you should have dozens of local producers selling eggs, but there's one giant corporation selling them to the whole country. Longest one guide moment ever, except the reason why I think this was very valuable is because it's not one person that listened to NPR. I'm sure there's plenty of people who don't speak in the chat that also listened to the same NPR analysis this morning and ate the propaganda hook, line, and fucking sinker and have now been informed that that was bullshit and now are more educated than they were before. That's my entire goal. When I get one guide, it's usually because that one guy is very clearly representing not just one person, but many other people's opinions on the matter. I also heard that, and I didn't think twice about it. Exactly. So there it is.
This is the normal response to Easter every year. That's to be expected, but we're keeping an eye on it because it shouldn't be used as an opportunity to price gouge. There seems to be a new normal price for eggs, and the reason for that isn't the flu or inflation or even a holiday, it's corporate greed. And what Cal-Maine Foods and the other large egg companies did last year is extort billions of dollars from the pockets of American consumers by placing a tax on an essential good that everybody needs, plain and simple.
Is there anything that can be done to stop this from happening over and over again?
There is. We need to hold these companies accountable. We at Farm Action wrote a letter to the FTC calling on them to investigate these companies. They can prosecute any violations of our antitrust laws that they would find, and ultimately, they should get the American people their money back.
It's this quick. Look at that. It's this fucking quick. This is all it takes. This is all it takes for for NPR, which is supposed to be one of the better news organizations, to just completely diminish the truth, okay? And you hear it when you're on your daily drive. You hear them on the radio, and you go, oh, that's it. I mean, why would you? Why would you think that this is not real? You know what I mean? Of course you're going to hear NPR. You're not conditioned into thinking fucking NPR is right-wing. You know what I mean? But this sentence in and of itself, which, by the way, you could technically say is true, okay? Because it's not like flocks of laying hens didn't rebound from a severe outbreak in the avian flu. They did. They did, okay? But that is not the reason why egg prices fell. The reason why egg prices fell was because of backlash. Egg prices started falling long before NPR covered it like this, as you saw in the More Perfect US video we just watched, okay? It's not like a full-blown lie. It's just there to misdirect you if you're paying just a little bit of attention to what they're saying. And NPR is probably the most objective news source you can get out of mainstream media. That is still the truth. So think about how insidious that is really quickly. They didn't say egg prices have fallen because there was a tremendous amount of backlash because I remember when it first came out. You want to know why egg prices started falling? Because quarterly earnings reports came out, and Cal-Maine, and the headline for Cal-Maine was 700% increase in profits. That's it. When that happened, everyone went, what the fuck? What do you fucking mean? I remember it. And once that happened, everyone was like, oh shit, this is ridiculous. That is when prices started falling. So much of the American capitalist franchises, so many of our verticals basically rely on the monkey see, monkey do operating principle. It doesn't have to make sense. They do it for price leadership, and especially with industries prone to monopolization with a natural barrier of entry like fucking airliners or whatnot, or even industries that actually don't have a massive natural barrier of entry like chickens laying fucking eggs, okay, that have still monopolized with corporate consolidation. All across the board, price leadership is profoundly important in setting prices, okay? Now, having said that, even tech layoffs could be attributed to literally monkey see, monkey do. Companies that are showing record profits are being pressured by their shareholders to make layoffs. So many tech companies that didn't have to make layoffs still engaged in mass layoffs. They did it because their shareholders demanded it. They did it because they knew that other people are doing it, so they have to do it as well. That's it. It's not as intelligent as you think it is. This structure is not designed in the perfect way that you think it's designed. In many instances, the answer can be a lot more simple. The answer is a lot simpler than you think it actually is in so many of these instances. But ultimately, there are some foundational principles that will always be true. Greed, profit-seeking behavior. That is oftentimes what is the responsible motivating principle, okay? Let's get back, because we started off with inflation falling for the 11th straight month as Fed considers another interest rate hike. This is how we got to the egg conversation. There's plenty of other instances. It's not just the eggs. every other avenue that you see often has the exact same issues, for the record. So let's continue.
To the Fed that 10 straight interest rate hikes in a row have worked to cool the economy somewhat and bring down inflation, and that the Fed may not need to do an 11th rate hike right now.
Estonian, thank you for the 10 gifted subs.
Looking to buy a car or a house. Now, we're not completely out of the woods when it comes to inflation. The Fed would like to see it at 2%, not 4%. But the White House is still calling this a win, especially because lower inflation is often paired with higher unemployment, which is something we aren't really seeing right now. Adriana?
Nancy, thanks so much. Along with inflation, Americans are suffering from so-called tipflation. That is due in part to the growth of digital payments and often automatically ask for tips.
God.
You know what we're talking about? Some people think it is out of control.
This is like, did Austin write this news article? Thank you, anonymous gifter, for the 5 gifted subs. This is literally, we've had this conversation on the Fear End podcast. Austin has talked about this, where like the autofill tipping literally fucking is like 20%, 25%, 30%. Everyone's so mad.
I'm hearing some in the studio right now. Carter Evans shows us how one business is trying to solve the gratuity.
It's so shitty. It's like, it's shitty because on the one hand, okay, employees literally, like, they rely on it for survival. On the other hand, the restaurants are taking advantage of that and just not paying their staff adequately. It's nuts.
Guilt. There you go, my friend.
When you pay for your ice cream at Molly Moon's in Seattle,
Then would you like a receipt, my friend?
leaving a tip is not allowed.
I have to say I'm highly annoyed at tipping now.
Owner Molly Moon Neitzel says her employees didn't like it either.
It's really awkward, especially in the counter service interaction. To watch someone make a decision, it never feels good.
Credit card processor Square says almost.
She better be on the other side, be like, I'm paying them the fattest salaries, right? Right? Please tell me she's going to say she's paying them really great salaries as a consequence, way more than they would get if tipping was allowed. Please tell me that.
Almost 75% of remote transactions now ask for gratuity, and it may be leading to a tipping backlash from the drive-thru
Homegirl, what am I going to tip you for?
to the donut shop.
I'm not throwing in that added tip on just a coffee.
A new Bankrate survey suggests 2/3 of Americans now have a negative view about tipping, and the number of people who always leave a tip is declining, down 10%, even at sit-down restaurants in just the last 2 years. But tipping can be hard to eliminate.
When restaurants replace tipping with higher menu prices, their online ratings go down.
Cornell.
Oh, they replace it with higher menu prices. Oh, that's crazy. Wait a minute. Why do they have to do that? The fucking cost of the food is the same. The fuck do you mean? No, it's because they don't. It's because all of a sudden they have to pay their workers an actual fee. That's why. The reason why customer is king in the United States of America, and the reason why you get the most like insane, subservient demand for like servile behavior from these human beings that are literally fucking serving you when you go to any restaurant or any like quick over-the-counter fast food chain or whatever, is because it's run on tips. So they make you assess the performance of the minimum wage employee that's in front of you every single time. It's really fucked up. I think it's unacceptable. And I say this as someone who still fucking maxes out on tips. I don't give a shit. I have enough money. For me, I don't see it as like I don't lie about this stuff. I think tipping is basically a gratuitous, it's charity. Tipping is charity, okay? That's what it is. It's charity. That's what it is. And that's why I do it. And that's why I don't feel bad doing it. I think it's charity, and I think it's valid to do charity like that, especially if you have the capacity to do so. Okay? You mean a system? No, I don't mean a system. I mean, it's charity.
Cornell University professor Michael Lynn says technology makes it easier for non-traditional businesses to ask for a little extra.
Like electricians or plumbers that might be embarrassed to ask for a tip in person, but when they send you an electronic bill, they can include a tip request.
Back when Molly Moons accepted tips, she says the biggest winners were credit card processors.
Because they make more on the credit card processing fees.
And she says the data from the very checkout system that asked for tips showed they led to pay inequities.
Black employees at Molly Moons were making a lot less than white employees.
You could tell that?
Absolutely. And so it became clear to us how unfair our total compensation system.
Dude, I love using racism. I love using racism as a way to like market your business, eliminating one aspect of payment, like one aspect of compensation. Listen, if she at the end of this does not openly state, I'm covering the cost of what these employees would make through tipping by paying them higher wages, I'm going to lose my fucking mind, okay?
Now she pays a minimum of $21 an hour, plus full health care, 401k match, and...
Okay, that's fire. Okay, so thank you. Why is that not the beginning of the conversation? Why is that not the beginning of the conversation? Minimum wage is $15, by the way, in Seattle. But why is that not the first thing that the media is covering here? That's it. That's literally it. The tipping structure sucks. That's why I'm paying them more. They don't need to be subsidized by the customers. I will make up the difference.
Child care assistance.
$5.23 on the scales.
To pay for it all, she did raise prices, but she says it evens out.
Our customers didn't pay any more. We just shifted how the money came in.
For CBS Mornings, I'm Carter Evans in Seattle.
All right.
I like that model. It's like the European model. Include the tip price essentially baked into the price for the food or the products. And that way, there's no anxiety.
Yeah.
There's no guilt.
Yeah.
You would hope that the employees are taken care of.
Yeah.
Right, by the employer.
Yeah. I imagine the only pushback is if you don't have cash to pay the higher price, at least with a tip, you can opt out. So if you're a lower income worker yourself, maybe you don't want to pay that extra amount.
Oh my God, dude, this is ridiculous, man. It's fucking ridiculous. God damn it, dude. Oh, if you're a low-wage worker, you can opt out. Like, what do you mean, man? What do you fucking mean? Like, you're... Holy shit. Also, you know what's ironic? I think poor people tip. It's often, like, rich people that don't tip as much. They're way fucking... They are way more particular about, like, the service that they're getting. Low-wage workers know how fucking shit the other person's job is, so they're like, here, I know you need this. You know what I mean?